Banking the league money. During the era of the 1980s and into the 1990s, many bowling leagues were responsible for banking their own prize fund monies. As time progressed, bowling centers would offer to do the banking for leagues, but for the most part, a league entrusted its prize fund to its own league officers. The men's Maryland Suburban Traveling League combined the job of treasurer with that of secretary, which had its ups and downsides as a dual system. But for the most part, it was preferable for me to do the banking myself. To illustrate how the banking process worked, acting for the MMSCL, the secretary-treasurer would sign a contract with each bowling center, guaranteeing a certain number of bowlers to pay the bowling establishment a linage fee, that is, cost of 3 games, each league night for each bowler for a certain amount of weeks. Generally, the independent houses like White Oaklanes and Fontana had a linage fee that was less than that of a chain establishment such as the Fairlanes Corporation. For example, I remember that at some point in the early to mid-1990s, Fairlanes would charge a duckpin league $8.20 per bowler for the cost of league games, while an independent center such as White Oaklanes would charge roughly $7.75 for the same 3 games. In the MMSCL, the secretary-treasurer fee per bowler was 55 cents, which for our purposes we'll consider as part of the league's prize fund. So, for example, if the weekly bowling fee was $16 a night per bowler, the portion of this fee for the prize fund at Fairlanes would be $16 minus the $8.20 linage fee, thus totaling $7.80 per bowler. And thus the prize fund for White Oak would be $16 minus $7.75, making it $8.25 per bowler. So, in regard to the bowling alley collecting its share of the linage fees, each team captain would typically collect the weekly fees from their team members and pay the front desk each week. So, if 12 teams of 5 players bowled at Fairlanes each week, this would amount to 60 bowlers. 60 bowlers multiplied by $16 each amounts to a total of $960 that the league would pay to the bowling alley on a given night, although there was always the issue of some bowlers going short for a week or 2 or 3, and some bowlers paying ahead. So at $8.20 per bowler for linage, multiply this figure by 60 bowlers, $8.20 by 60, and the Fairlanes cut of the $960 money that they took in, that the team captains would pay to the control desk, was $492 per night. A decent number of these bowlers often paid with a check each week, and so when the secretary would arrive at the end of the night to collect the league money from the bowling alley, Fairlanes and the other centers, after taking its cut of the nightly money, would normally return the checks to the secretary first and then pad the balance of the league's prize fund with cash. Sometimes there would be more money in checks paid to the bowling alley than the $492 that went to Fairlanes, and the secretary would then have to pay cash, when possible, to the bowling center to cover the overage in checks. So in this way, the 50-50 money would come in handy if there was ever a need to dip into that to pay cash to the house. Once all money was collected from the bowling centers and any of the 50-50 sales and singles league fees, I would take the weekly money to the bank on the following Saturday, that is the next day, before they closed at noon. In the middle to later years of the MMSCL, when I would input the frame-by-frame scores on Friday nights, sometimes doing the banking was a race against time, since I was usually worn out on Friday night, and it took a decent amount of time to do the treasury work, which included endorsing all the checks and listing the check numbers on the back of the deposit slip, as well as counting out the cash and then driving to the bank. It was helpful to order a custom rubber stamp for the league, which was a big time saver for endorsing the checks. On a side note, just as a FYI, I remember that at one time, Fairlanes was charging $8.20 for linage for its duckpin leagues, while the fee was $10.50 for its tenpin leagues. This may have just been one of those short-time differences. However, this may have been the norm at the time. I do recall that duckpin leagues seemed to have better prize funds than when I bowled in tenpin leagues in the early to mid-1980s. However, If there was a standard difference between the two bowling variations, I can only speculate that the extra fee for tenpins may have been to help pay for automatic scoring.